again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I am coming at you with another Wargaming and miniature video. In this video, I'm going to start my AWI project, my Revolutionary War, American War of Independence, depending on where you're at, what it's called. Okay, so this project has been a point of contention with me. I love the period. I love the battles and the personalities and the characters that were involved. And so never really gamed it though, right? I mean, this first project update is going to let you. It's going to give you a little insight into my thought process with my AWI project that's upcoming. And that's why I got this stack of books out. I just want to kind of share some reference materials and basically tell you which way I'm going with everything, let you know how I'm getting started, and then as the project progresses, then I will give you updates towards the AWI project. Okay, before we begin, I want to let you know that I've got multiple projects running simultaneously. I've got a 15mm Ancients project. I got a 15mm AWI project. I've got a 10mm Napoleonics project and a 28mm medieval project. So I've got a variety of scales, 10, 15, and 28mm, covering a large area of time. It's kind of weird that it goes 15 for the ancients, 28 for the medievals, 15 for the American War of Independence, and then tiny 10s for the Napoleonics. And there are reasons why I'm going that way. Okay, so but today's video is going to be revolving around the American War of Independence. Okay, so one year, me and my friends got together and we took a road trip to Gettysburg. There was a convention there called Historicon. You've all heard of it. We played a variety of different games. At the time, I was really big into Napoleon's battles. And I didn't bring miniatures. We brought dice and rulers, but that's about it. We went there to play games, not to run games. Okay, so when we got there, there was this 2-part Napoleonics game. And you could only play in one or the first or the second part because there were so many people that wanted to sign up. It was a big battle. I don't remember what the battle was, but it was over the course of like 4 tables. And I took the command of one corps on one of the tables. And in that first game session, 4 to 6 hours, I don't remember exactly what, I don't think I rolled one die for an attack. I think I took that entire session to maneuver into a position to grant my second half compatriot, whoever took over my command give them a good chance to win, right? Uh, I know there was a lot of players that would just charge forward and engage, especially the enemy. They were just running forward and engaging and attacking and stuff like that. But my core, I, because I'm an expert Napoleon's Battles player, I got to tell you, I've gotten to the point where Napoleon's Battles isn't fun anymore because I don't lose. Okay, so I visualized the entire battle, the 4 tables, what was going on these 4 tables, terrain wise, unit wise. I knew what needed to happen, right? So I maneuvered my guys up to a position where it was an extremely advantageous position. And then later I find, and this is where the AWI comes in, later I find that one of my buddies that did the road trip with me took over my command, and in less than 1 hour, the entire enemy force was wiped out because I put him in such a good position that he just steamrolled he was also a good Napoleon's Battles player. So, I mean, yeah, we used to play that like every weekend together, and then we would go to conventions and stuff and roll tables. But he wiped everything out. Okay, but here's the point. In that second session, since I wasn't able to play, I went looking for another game. I didn't know what I wanted to play. I just wanted to find something that sounded interesting. So I found a game being run called British Grenadier. And I had never heard of the game. Never heard of it. I said, British Grenadier, what's this all about? That sounds like a Napoleonic kind of thing, right? But no, it was American War of Independence. And I'm like, okay, that sounds good. Let's check it out. I'm excited about American War of Independence. So I took the command of a British, I have no idea. I don't even remember. I didn't know how to play the game. I didn't know what was going on. I was just pushing figures and rolling dice when they told me to. They gave me casualties. I gave them casualties. I don't know what was going on, right? I think that's the best kind of game, actually, when you don't know the rules. I honestly think that is the best kind of game. One reason why, and that's why I love games that have referees or hosts that can explain, like, this is what you need to roll. This is what kind of a situation you're in, because that takes the responsibility or the mental limitations of manipulating the rules for your advantage. And I did that a lot with Napoleon's Battles. I knew how to pin units and coordinate attacks and things like that. That was probably too much on the micromanagement, right? Like as a core commander, I should not be issuing those. I should not be minusculing, micro movements and positioning my troops in such a way where it has the best advantage. But I did that because you play to win the game, right? Okay. Well, that was my experience with Napoleon's Battles. I also, at that time, played Field of Glory. Field of Glory is a tournament game like DBA, DBM. I have an army, you have an army, we get on the table, we battle it out, boom, I win or I lose, I go in the winner's bracket or the loser's bracket or double limb or round robin or whatever, five, whatever we're doing. It was play a game, move on to the next round. It's a tournament, there's a prize in the end, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to play those kind of games. Field of Glory, I thought was going to be a good game because it ran the table of genres in the Sword and Shield eras, right? All the way from ancient, classical, Egyptians, all the way up to the 100 Years' War or whatever. And so I thought I was going to like that game. And then they even went into a Napoleonic version of the game, and I got a free copy of that as a playtester. And I realized I don't want to play those type of tournament games. I want to play scenarios. And I didn't want to know the rules. I know that sounds silly. It sounds ludicrous, really. As a host for a game, you as a player, you don't need to know the rules. Me as a player that somebody else is hosting a game, I don't have to know the rules. I sat down and played British Grenadier at Historicon, not knowing the first thing about this rule system, and loved it. I fell in love with the game, and probably because I don't know who won. I think they won, actually. I think we caused a lot of casualties, but we didn't accomplish any of our objectives. I think that's the truth. But I had fun doing it. So you know what I did when I got home from Historicon? I immediately ordered these rules. That's high praise, in my opinion. You play a rule set, I go to myself, man, that was great rules, man. I got to learn how to play this game and maybe teach it to others and really have a good time. And my buddy that played with me, one of my road trip guys actually played with us. He bought a copy of the rules too. I guess he loved the rules. He's a big historian, just like me, and he probably knows more about the American War of Independence than I do. But we got the rules. We started getting figures, and we started basing figures and stuff like that. But here comes the problem. Once I started learning the rules, I stopped liking the game. First of all, it's based on General de Brigade. I never did like that set of rules. That was a Napoleonic set of rules, and it's too complicated. Not that I couldn't figure it out, because I could figure it out. It just had too many little fiddly, rules like, is his bayonet sharpened? Does he have enough powder for his musket? I'm exaggerating. It's not that bad. But that's the way it felt. It felt like if he takes 3 steps, he's not going to be able to thrust. But if he takes 4, he can. No, I don't want to know that. I don't want to get into that level of detail in a game. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I do like that kind of a game. But I thought I was going to like this set of rules. I got it. You can see I got all the scenario books. This is first edition. They came out with a second edition. I did not buy second edition. Maybe I should have, because maybe second edition became easier. Not easier, less complicated. It had too many die rolls, too many charts, too many different things. So I bought figures, we based them up, and I don't think I even played a game of this. I was ready to play a game. Maybe I did. Maybe once we played a game of Freeman's Farm. And of course, it was fun, but it was kind of like, whatever. So, because of that, this got my palate wet on American War of Independence. I was like, man, there's got to be a better way, right? There's so many other rule systems out there that I know of, or I don't know of, because I really wasn't on the lookout for them. And then I find not that set of rules. Okay. Then I find this set of rules. Black powder. What's under there? Oh, yeah. Black powder. Okay, so I was like, black powder? Okay, what's this all about? It's Warlord games. I watched some videos. It seemed like it was very straightforward, very smooth, very manageable. The scale was not Napoleon's battles where I was moving entire armies around. I was only moving corps or maybe a division. The maneuver element was a battalion. I was like, okay, and then in the American War of Independence, like in the regiments. And I was like, okay, this is a great set of rules. But, here comes the but. It's generic, right? Okay. Which is not a bad thing. But it covers a large swath of time, like Field of Glory, right? So I could play anything that has a musket, you can play, right? And so I was like, okay, that's cool, because then I could do like Napoleonics, I could do American War of Independence, so I could do 7 Years War, I could do French and Indian War, I could do Zulu War, I could do whatever, right? So I got it, I read it, I fell in love with it. This is a great set of rules, but it breaks down when you start getting to like Marlborough and the Jacobite Rebellion and all that stuff, which I don't play anyway, so I don't care. It's great for American War of Independence. It's great for Napoleonics. So I said, okay, this is a good set of rules. I started collecting models, started painting them up, and then they came out with a second edition. But something in my mind just told me there's got to be more, right? There's got to be a difference, because this seemed like it was built for large models, 28 millimeters. And I like playing 28 millimeters, but I also like 15s. So I was like, I don't know. The basing is too generic. The models on the field, you get 24 figures, 4 figures of base, 6 bases, or 4 bases, or however you do it. It just didn't look right, right? It played well. It plays well. It's a good game. And there's nothing saying I couldn't rebase my models or just use 15 millimeter models and figure it out. There's nothing saying I couldn't do that. But I'm not that ambitious to sit here and write a whole set of rules for myself. So I kept looking, and I found this set of rules. Land of the Free. There is this is an Osprey game, right? Osprey Publishing. So I thought to myself, I heard it was a good set of rules. I don't know anything about it. So I heard from the grapevine. But this covers a large variety. This covers like 4 eras, right? From the French and Indian War through the Revolutionary War, the Indian Wars, and the War of 1812, which is Napoleonic technically. So I said, okay, let's get a copy of this. It's not too expensive, you know. 34.95, you know, brand new. So I said, okay, let's get it. I got it. It's great, you know, with Osprey, you know, they always have great photos and pictures from their Osprey games. What was kind of cool about this set of rules, it reminded me heavily of Black Powder, right? There we go, Black Powder. It almost is identical to Black Powder in some ways. In other ways, it's not. Like Command and Control is different in this set than in this. This has more of a Napoleon's Battles command. I don't know, General de Brigade. I don't know. It's got its own command, and I love the way they do their command. I love the way Black Powder does their dice rolls and stuff like that. So I'm kind of conflicted between these two sets of rules. And then second edition Black Powder came out. Second edition Black Powder streamlined some things. What? Black Powder needed to be streamlined? It really didn't. This set of rules doesn't change anything really from first edition. It changes one thing, and that's Command and Control. So they changed Command and Control, but not basically, instead of giving your senior commander its own command, they basically allow your senior commander to give a sub commander a reroll. That's a big change, but it's very subtle. And they've got a supplement for Black Powder that talks exclusively about the American War of Independence. Generals, units, unit colors, scenarios, a lot of scenarios, tons of pictures, figures. Black Powder, though, to be honest, is designed for 28 millimeter miniatures. It just is. The movement ranges in Black Powder are huge. 36 inches for infantry. He goes even further for cavalry. That's okay if you're a Perry brother and you've got a 8-foot wide table, or if you're one of my buddies has got like an 8-foot wide table, that's not bad, right? But when you're talking about a 5-foot table like I have, or a 4x6, or 4x8 like most people can make, you run into, and the ranges of the weapons, I set up, you set up, on turn 1, we're already shooting each other. I don't like games like that. Remember that Napoleon's Battles game where I spent 4 hours maneuvering and never firing a shot? That cannot happen in Black Powder. The units are too close together and your movement is too large and the weapon ranges are too large. So like I'll have a cannon on the table. It'll have a 48-inch range. And on turn 1, I'm firing on the enemy. No opportunity to maneuver, no need to limber and maneuver to a good position to fire. So I don't like Black Powder in 28 millimeter. So I thought to myself, let's switch to maybe 15 millimeters. Let's have the ranges. That technically doubles the size of my table. If I have the ranges, now I've got a 10-foot wide table, effectively. Then it'll take at least 2 turns, maybe 3 turns, to maneuver to get into range to start firing. I understand I could set up some units in range to fire and others not, and entry from the side of the table and stuff like that. So I started exploring 15 millimeter. I know this is a history lesson of Mr. Everything and his mental breakdown that he's had in this last couple of months. Okay. And then I started thinking about the same thing with my black powder Napoleonics, because they run into the same issue. 28 millimeters, too close. They're firing on turn 1. No maneuver. You can't play a big battle. Everything is condensed, like just around Hougoumont or just around La Haye Sainte or just around Quatre Bras, and not the entire battle that actually took place. But I did not want to go back to Napoleon's battles, because that was a scale up. So instead of a battalion, your maneuver element is a brigade, and I didn't want to do that. Okay, so I started thinking, maybe I can do both. I can take my American War of Independence and my Napoleonics and shrink it down to 15 millimeter, half the scales, double my table size. I was thinking to myself, that's the way I want to go. And then Warlord Games had to kick me in the nuts. They came out with a set of rules for black powder playing with smaller scale figures. They call it epic. They started with American Civil War. I am not a fan of American Civil War battles. I'm not a fan of American Civil War units or uniforms or anything. I'm just not a fan of the whole period. It's not extreme enough, right? Okay, so it needs to be colorful. It needs to have variety, and the American Civil War just doesn't, right? North, South, Zouaves, you're done, right? But knowing that black powder was being adjusted, let's say, for a 15 millimeter game, I was thinking to myself, let's just go ahead and get a bunch of 15 millimeters and use the epic black powder rules for my Napoleonics or my American War of Independence. But that never really caught on with me. I tried putting a bunch of 15 millimeters, and then I looked at the base scale. Their base scale is 60 millimeters. That's stupid. It's just stupid to half the figure scale but double the base scale. Because what you're doing is you're making your table smaller by increasing the frontage. And the whole reason why you want to go with epic or smaller figures is so that you could double your table size. Okay, so after a while, I just gave up on it. And then just last month, they said, hey, we're going to do epic Napoleonics. And I revisited it and said, okay, epic Napoleonics. This sounds good. What's going on? Fuck. 60 millimeter bases. What the fuck are they thinking? And that, I'm sorry, I'm cussing, but that I cussed that time. I apologize for my foul mouth, but that tells you how much I think it's stupid that they went with 60 millimeter bases. 10 men across, 2 ranks, 60 millimeters. Ridiculous. Okay. But I said, okay, I can overlook that. I can overlook it. Let's give it a chance. Let's figure this out. So I pre-ordered a box. We'll see if it comes. Well, we'll see when it comes in the end of January. And then I have a sneaking suspicion they're gonna do next year American War of Independence. I bet you they do. But that's okay. I'll already have a bunch of figures based for my scale. Okay. And we'll get into that before this video is over. Okay, and I thought about it. I said, okay, they have British, they have French. Great. They're going to release Prussians. I understand. But they're not planning on releasing anything else in the near future unless it sells well. So that tells me I can't do anything with that set of rules. French and British and Prussians is no historical battle. None. Maybe Prussians and French. Okay, no problem. British never fought by themselves. They always had allies. Plus, it's the Belgique Shaco, so you're pretty stuck with having Dutch Belgians, Netherlanders, Nassau, Brunswickers, but they don't release any of those figures. I was like, okay, no worries. They're going to have phases. They release their miniatures in phases. So I was thinking, okay, it's no big deal. We'll live with it. And then through evaluation of the box set, I haven't got it in yet. I see that it is 13.5 millimeters. They claim it is N scale. Other companies claim N scale is either 10 or 12 millimeters. Why? There are no other game companies out there making 13.5 millimeter miniatures in Napoleonics or American War of Independence. So that got me frustrated. And that's where the F word comes from. If they had just done a 30 millimeter base or 40, I could even live with a 40 millimeter base. If they could have done a 30 or 40 millimeter base, maybe with 5 models or 4 models in a real scale, like 15 millimeter or 10 millimeter, one or the other, not something in the middle, not 13.5. This makes me think they're trying to not prioritize. What's the word I'm looking for? Proprietary, right? They're trying to make their models usable only, or let me rephrase that. They're trying to make their game usable by only their models. I'm fighting back on that, right? I must be right wing, right? I must be independent. I must be a free thinker, a critical thinker, right? I must have my own free will or something, because that makes me mad. If hypothetically, if they released Epic Waterloo in a true 15 millimeter model, and they made 40 millimeter bases. And maybe you could squeeze 5 on there. I don't think you could, but if you could squeeze 5 models, usually 4 on a 40 mil, it's 10 millimeters per figure usually. If they squeezed them on there, I would be so much more inclined to buy it, because then I could say, okay, I've got my 15 millimeter Russians. I can use those with those figures. I've got 15 millimeter terrain. Great, it's going to work with these. I've got 15 millimeter cavalry and artillery and Austrians and Baden Saxons. I've got all these 15 millimeter models that will work with their epic rules. Included in their boxes, they give you 15 millimeter buildings. Those buildings are going to be way too big. They're going to be way too big for a 13.5 millimeter model. Now, this is based on seeing other people review these models. Recently, I've been watching some some painting tutorials of the Epic Waterloo sprues that some YouTubers got their hands on ahead of time. They don't look, they almost look 15 millimeter to me. They look pretty big, but they claim that they're like 13 millimeters. So when I get those in, I'll compare them, we'll check them out. But it got me to thinking. I'll get back to my AWI here in just a second. It got me to thinking about black powder as a whole. Why can't I ignore their bases and their figures, like F them, and just do my own thing, but still use the black powder rules for rolling dice, moving figures? Okay. And then I thought, okay, screw it. I'm just going to get, well, actually, I got a bunch of different models from a bunch of different companies, ranging from 10 to 15 millimeters. I'm going to compare them. One of my 15 millimeter figures actually comes out to about 13.5 millimeters. So I'm going to compare those models to the Epic models, and if it works, then maybe I'll go with the Epic. I don't know. But otherwise, I don't think I'm going to. Okay, so I decided, F it, I'm just going to do my own thing. One good thing about black powder is they don't care how many figures you have on a base. They don't care how many bases you use. They don't care how big your bases are. None of that matters. None of that matters. As long as both sides are using the same basing convention, right? Or close. They don't even have to be exact. They just have to be close. Because, yeah, so, right. But I am anal. You could call me Mr. Analtivity, because I will, and as you can see, I'm talking to you on the camera. I agonize over this kind of stuff. I need to know how big my bases are going to be. I need to know that. I need to know how many figures I'm going to put on a base. I need to know what scale of the figure I'm going to put on the base. I need to know how many bases I need for a regiment. I need to know that kind of stuff, because once I and it takes me like a couple of days to kind of hash it out. But once I figure it out, I stick with it. And then I make my entire army that way. I make both sides that way. Everything works together. Okay. So I said to myself, Mr. Everything, what are we going to do with American War of Independence? And I said to myself, Mr. Everything, we're doing 15 millimeter. 15 millimeter is exactly half of 30 millimeter. I'm going to be able to put a number of figures on the table. It's going to look good, right? I'm going to be able to make my regiments with more figures, and it will make those regiments look better. Okay. So then I said to myself, well, Mr. Everything, how are we going to do this? Well, and understand that I'm kind of considering this at the same time I'm considering my 15 millimeter Ancients. I'm going to make another video about Ancients. It'll be my Ancients project, so go check that out. And there's going to be a little overlap along with the Napoleonics and junk. Okay. So I said 15 millimeter base sizes. Well, a 15 millimeter miniature fits well on a 10 millimeter frontage. So if I was to use a 40 millimeter strip like DBA and a 15 millimeter depth, I could put 4 figures on that base. And I could call it a base. I could put 2 of them back to back, and it would look like a base with 8 figures on it. So, Land of the Free. Okay, we already know Black Powder uses like a 40 by 40, but that's for their 28 millimeters. Land of the Free uses a 40 by 30, okay? And they put 3 figures on that in the front rank and 3 figures on the back rank, for a total of 6 figures on a 40 millimeter base. And it looks pretty good, actually. I'm very happy with the look. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. You probably can't see that. Okay, I don't know if you can see that, but that looks good. 40 millimeter wide, 30 millimeter deep, 3 figures. Not 4. It's a 40 millimeter base, but they're only putting 3 figures on there. What that allows you to do, instead of their shoulders touching, they're actually like, to scale, it looks like they're about 18 inches apart, which from my reading, that's how you stand in that period. They would stand about 18 inches apart, about the length of an arm, right? Okay, well, actually, they're closer than arm length. So maybe they're only about 12 inches apart. That would be like close order, right? Okay. And if I was to take a 40 millimeter base and put 4 figures on there, they would be touching. My Ancients, my Romans, are on DBA basing, right? 40 millimeters across, 15 millimeter depth. These guys are not exactly shoulder to shoulder, right? But they're close. And there is 4 bases. For a regiment of American War of Independence, they recommend like 3 to 7 bases or whatever. It's like a 1 to 20 scale. So depending on how many men are in that regiment, you can kind of determine how many bases you would need for this game. But for black powder, that's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. You can decide how you want to do it. So what I was thinking was I was going to use 4 bases to represent a black powder unit. Okay, so here, hang on, let's. Right, that might be easier to see. Okay, so you never go less than 2 ranks, right? So that's a pretty narrow frontage when it comes to American War of Independence. I could do 6 bases, right? I could do 6, and then it would be that big with 2 ranks, and that's actually that would be a lot of figures, but I like the way Land of the Free does it, where you have 3 figures on a base, because they're basing them like companies, right? And those companies would actually be operating separately. They would be individual companies. So I would have like my Grenadier company, my flanker company, and then I would have my center companies. That's Napoleonics. And then 3 figures, which would actually be 2 bases, right? Because instead of 1 base this size, basically I just split it into 2 bases. Or I could do 1 base this size with 6 models on it. And then if I did 6 bases, I would have 6, 6, and 6, which would only be 18 models. Right? So I'm saving models. Or I could go with 8 bases. And then what are we at? 24? Perfect. So most of the bags that I buy are 24 figures. So I could make 8 bases per bag, 8 bases for a regiment. I could make 4 bases like this, a small unit, because you want your small units to be exactly half the frontage of your standard units. And then if I ever needed to make large units, I could just add a couple of bases. And then if I ever needed to make a tiny unit, I could just put 2 bases out there and they would always be skirmishing. So I think that's the way I'm going to do it. I think my American War of Independence, I'm going to do 6 figures, 3 figures on a thin base, and then count 2 bases as basically 1 base. You know what I mean? 6 figures or 2 bases being a company. Now with the ancients, I'm going to stick with the 4 figures per base. Medium infantry will use a 20 millimeter depth 3-figure frontage, right? And then light infantry will be a 20 millimeter depth, the same, but only 2-figure per base. And then cavalry does something similar, 3 or 2. So you can, with just like DBA. Even though I'm not playing DBA, I'm basing them like DBA. When it comes to American War of Independence, I might do just 6 figures on a base, just like Perry, right? Or just like those guys. There's this rule set is designed to be played with 15 mil, 28 mil, or 40 millimeter. They give you base sizes based on what scale your figures are. And here's some French. And there's a unit of French, right? And that's got 5 bases. So that's 30 figures. But I don't know if I want to do that. I want to do 24 figure units. For companies like that. But there are large battalions. They might need, or regiments in this case, they might need that 5th base. But I'm only okay, let me back that up. I'm probably not playing Land of the Free. I'm probably playing Black Powder. I just liked the way the bases looked in Land of the Free, and I liked the command in Land of the Free. So when I go to actually play a game, I don't know if I'm going to be playing Land of the Free or Black Powder. It could be a mixture. It could be I take some rules from one game, some rules from another game, and kind of make my own hybrid. And that's probably what I'm going to do, because I like the Black Powder dice rolls for like shooting and melee and casualties and unit stats and stuff like that. Special abilities, marksmanship, that kind of stuff. But command and control, I think I like from Land of the Free. So I'll figure that out. Over the next, that's part of this AWI is, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm evaluating the rules closer to see what rules I can use from one and use in the other. Okay. To finish this video out, I just want to let you know that Old Glory 15s, if you go to the website Old Glory 15s and you enter the code Xmas50 or whatever code, you could see it on their homepage. They have a variety of different codes. You can get a percentage off. It's based on how much you order. Because I ordered a ludicrous amount of models from Old Glory, 15s, I ordered Romans, Carthaginians, Macedonians, Germans, British, Continentals, I think that's it. But I ordered enough models to do an army in all of those. If you were to say that approximately it would be $200 per army, which is a normal, now I'm talking about an entire board side, winds up being about $200, which is not a bad price for a huge army like that, right? It would come out to about $1,000. But with their Christmas deal, I was able to get that for $500. So if you're thinking about doing 15 millimeter Ancients, 15 millimeter Marlboro, Jacobite, World War II, Maybe not World War II. Maybe they do have World War II. I'm not sure. But um, American War of Independence, Romans, Carthaginians, whatever. Check them out. Uh, in U.S. dollars, you get about a unit for $10 normally. So you can get a unit like this, 24 figures, $10. Uh, Now they have like a code that gives you 45% off. I think you have to order $400 worth. But guess what that is? That's two sides of the table. So if you're already thinking about getting some 15 millimeter Napoleonics, get a bunch of the British guys, get a bunch of the French guys, build it up to about $400, and you can get 45% off. That's almost 50%. So you'd only be paying about 220 bucks, and you're getting enough to do an entire battle on both sides. I cannot recommend it enough. Uh, okay, so I anticipate getting enough models in to do at least Freeman's Farm, maybe a little bit towards Princeton, but there are some really large battles in American War of Independence. But I'm going to take my time to build that up. I'm actually aiming for Freeman's Farm. So I went to GMB, ordered some 15 millimeter flags. I, I, which they don't have all the flags I need at GMB. Believe it or not, there's some regiments they don't have in 15 millimeter. They have them in 28s, but just not 15s. Uh, they have some generic continental flags, which most of the continentals didn't have any kind of real uniformity at that period. Uh, like the Betsy Ross or whatever, they didn't really have a lot of that. They had like the snake flags, they had the tree flags, they had the flags still with the Union Jack in the corner. They had a lot of different, like everybody had their own flag, right? And a lot of it is conjecture, so we're not really exactly sure. Um, but that's great. I mean, I'm just going to make a bunch of Continental different units and then we'll just pin them in there, militia or Continentals or whatever. Now, the British, on the other hand, they're a little bit more conformed, so they would have regimental colors and their king's colors, and GMB doesn't sell every flag. So I had to go outside GMB. I tried looking from Fighting 15s. They don't sell AWI. I went to Wargame Miniatures. I think I bought some flags there. I went to... Basically, I've been on the lookout for 15 millimeter AWIs flags. I might go to Magister Militarium because I know they sell some flags and they sell a lot of 15 millimeter models. Yeah, so I might check them out. I haven't checked them out yet. Exactly. Okay, so flags. Terrain. Okay, I've been building a lot of terrain for my 10 millimeter project. And guess what? It'll work perfect for 15s. 10 and 15s are close enough that trees and buildings, and maybe not the buildings, but trees and hills and rivers and roads will all work. But buildings, I went to Sarissa, ordered some North American buildings in 15 millimeter. So we'll see those coming in. I don't know. I've got like 20 different orders out right now. Pendragon, Sarissa, GMB, Battlescape, War Bases, Old Glory now, the huge Old Glory order I just did a couple of days ago. So, yeah, so we're going to see. I love Old Glory. I've loved them for years. My Napoleon's battles, Napoleonics, were all 90%. Because I had some Essex and minifigs in there, but it was almost all Old Glory. And these Romans are Old Glory Principes, and they look really good. And I'll show those off in my Ancients project video, which I'm getting ready to record here in just a few minutes. All right, I'll see you in the next video.